Hello, my lovelies. As promised, I wanted to come back and I hate how this does this. Sorry. Wanted to come back and speak to women's health. It took me a while. I knew I wanted to do this, but it took me a while to be able to speak to it. Um, but my mom passed from stage 4 ovarian cancer, and there's no way that should have happened. She had one gynecologist. That gynecologist retired, I believe, in 2012, the end of 2012. Um, and then she had gotten another gynecologist. Now, I don't know if she had one between 2012 and 2019. So her next gynecologist she had she was assigned to from 2019 up until her passing. So the one that retired, I found in my research, because I did file a complaint with the California Medical Board um, against the doctors and, the hospital as well, ultimately. Um, so the gynecologist she had up until 2012, and I don't remember how long she had that particular doctor. I have to look in my notes. But that doctor, I found out, was on probation. She was put on 4-year probation. She was not allowed to do surgeries. Now, it didn't say exactly why she was put on probation, but she was only allowed to do local anesthesia and in-office procedures. So that gynecologist, and I'm not going to say any names, but that gynecologist told my mother that after a certain age, I believe it was after 70, you don't have to get pap smears or checkups anymore, which is not true. My mother had all of her reproductive organs. She did not have a hysterectomy. So she should not have been told that. That is false. Obviously, that was incorrect because of what she passed from. Now, I feel that the gynecologist she was reassigned to should have been more on top of, contacting my mother, asking her to come in for checkups. They don't care. After a certain age, they don't care, especially with Black women. I'm just going to be honest, with Black women. Now, what I also found in my research, because when the gynecology oncologist met with my mother and I in April, she told us that the only cancer test there is in the reproductive area is for the cervix. There's no test for uterine cancer, fallopian tube cancer, or ovarian cancer. And the likelihood of catching any of those at stage 1 or 2 is very slim. Ovarian cancer, I believe, when I looked back in April, it said either April or May, or maybe I looked when I was putting the complaint letters together. But when I looked a few months ago, it said 17% chance of doctors catching stage 1 ovarian cancer. So, that gynecology oncologist said that, they typically catch those at stage 3 and 4. So what I want to say, and what I said to the supervisor, physician, supervisor of my mother's primary care doctor, and also the patient care advocate for this particular hospital. I'm not even going to say the hospital's name. I informed them. I said, my goal is not to get money. My goal is to bring awareness to the doctors, the hospital, and get better care, advocate for better care for Black women, men, and children. I said, because and I told all of them this, and I also said this in the letters to the doctors. I said this in the letters to the regional and national executive team for this particular hospital. When I put stuff together, when I write, I don't play. I always keep it professional, but I don't play. I told my mother before she passed that I was going to write a letter. I was thinking I was just going to write a letter to her primary care doctor because I was very upset with the doctor and her lack of providing proper care and attention to my mother over the years. So what's important is that Black women, men, and children get better health care, that we're given the same attention and quality care as other ethnicities. And none of them could dispute what I said. The ones that I spoke to, they couldn't dispute it because they know. They know the number. They know how we're treated. They've seen how we've been treated. They know. They're aware. So that's what's important for me, to bring awareness. I also told them that just like we are required at a certain age to start getting mammograms, it also needs to be a requirement that we have scans of the abdominal and pelvic area, as well as vaginal sonograms. Now, this is something you can ask for because most likely unless there's something going on, your gynecologist or your primary care doctor are not going to put in referrals for that. So we have to be our own advocates, especially Black people, Black and brown. We have to be our own medical advocates. We have to advocate for our loved ones. So that is what I am encouraging this particular hospital to do. Also, my gynecologist, my doctors, I'm going to let them know what happened and let them know that I definitely want at least once a year, maybe even twice a year, have a pelvic scan as well as vaginal sonograms. And again, for people coming on, those are necessary because the only reproductive cancer test and screening that we have right now is only for the cervix. We do not have that for the uterus, the fallopian tubes, or the ovaries. And see, I wasn't aware of this. I thought you could get blood work done and they could see, but then if you think about it, blood work doesn't make sense. Like they actually need to scan those areas and see exactly what may be going on, what may or may not be going on. And you may not always have symptoms of certain things that are going on. So we need to have them checked regularly, right? So I did want to say that. Yeah. And also, last I spoke to the patient care advocate at this hospital. Now I will say this is in South San Francisco and San Francisco. There's two different hospitals. My mother's doctor was in San Francisco. There really aren't that many doctors of color, meaning Black or Latina doctors in the Bay Area. So my mother's doctors were not Black. I'll say that. Now, with the primary care doctor, my mother also had an autoimmune disease that typically is in Black people. It was called sarcoidosis. You can look that up. And sarcoidosis actually primarily attacks internal organs, but the main organ is the lungs. So my mom hadn't had a scan of her lungs since, I believe, either it was 2005 or 2015. So that was my thing also with the doctor, that she was not staying on top of my mother even just for that, because she should have been monitoring that as well. So just to give a little backstory, my mother had a mild heart attack in November 2023. And I looked up symptoms and signs of cancer. And symptoms and signs are, I don't know all of them, but I know heart attack and stroke can be signs and symptoms of cancer, just so you know that. So in my letter to this primary care doctor and everybody else, all the executives, I said that she failed to properly take measures to do extensive testing, because at that point she would have seen, if she had done scans and gotten tests and said, hey, you know, my mother never had a heart attack before. This was her first time, and she was 77. So that should have been a red flag for the doctor and said, hey, you know, let me do some additional testing to see what's going on. Now, at that time, I didn't look, I didn't even think. And at that time in November, my mother hadn't lost that much weight. She was still eating. She was still moving around. She was still able to drive. Fast forward to January, that's when her, they put her on this medication. I want to say that too. Sometimes, because I did go to a holistic doctor in New York, and he said that a lot of times certain medications, because they're accelerate any cancer that may be present. So I feel that that's what happened, and I did tell her pulmonologist that, because she was apologizing, because my mom's, lost her appetite, which is one of the that's one of the symptoms of this particular heart medicine. It was a high blood pressure medicine that my mother was on, and one of the symptoms is loss of appetite, but it was so drastic and extreme. So I told my mother, I said, well, I think the medication is too strong. And so then when we found out in April that she had cancer, I said, well, that medication dosage was too strong. And I believe it actually accelerated the process of the cancer. And I told her doctor that. And I said, that's what I believe. I said, I've been to holistic doctors. This is what was told to me. And that's what I believe. So anyway, we just really have to stay on top of our medical team. And, I told my mother, I said, listen, because there were other things. Her primary care doctor was very rude. Her bedside manner was horrible. I don't know why my mother even kept her that long, as long as she did. And I told my mom, I said, if I have a new doctor that I'm assigned to, and I feel like they're not giving me the attention that I need, or their attitude isn't, vibing with mine, then I'll change them. And I have no problem with that. So my mother was with the primary care doctor for 15 years. And she told me before she didn't want to hurt her feelings. And I said, F her feelings. Because at the end of the day, it's your health that matters. And if you don't have a doctor that cares about you and that's going to take the time that you need, you're a senior woman now. You're a senior woman. You need more care and attention. And, sometimes there are patients where you kind of have to convince them to do some things. So sometimes my mom was that patient. Not everyone is going to be easy and open to doing, certain things, and rightly so. You kind of have to do the research and see. You don't want to do invasive procedures. You don't want to do, certain tests, but certain tests needed to be done. And the tests that could have been done for my mother didn't necessarily have to be invasive. And I just feel like her doctor didn't try hard enough, because, hold on, I have to stop this.